As we go to air tonight, as you've just seen, Daniel Andrews' 9-year reign as Premier of Victoria has officially ended. After 3,219 days in the top job, enough time, of course, to qualify himself for a statue, just moments ago at 5 p.m, Andrews' resignation came into effect. Former Deputy Premier Jacinta Allan, as you just saw, has been elevated to the top job, and Industry Minister Ben Carroll is now Deputy.
I pledge to continue to work incredibly hard, as I have done each and every day.
I can't wait to roll up the sleeves and get on and support this new leadership team. Can I congratulate Vicky Ward, who's also an outstanding addition to the Victorian Cabinet. We're really looking forward to getting on with it and doing great things.
Now, the composition of this new leadership team is the first indication that the ironclad control Andrews had over the party and his almost dictatorial style of governing could be coming to an end. Allan is a member of Andrews' socialist left faction and was his pick for Premier, but Carroll is a member of the right. This morning, Allan was favourite for Premier and Treasurer Tim Pallas, another member of the socialist left, albeit for about 5 minutes, was favourite for Deputy. Allan was essentially expected to walk into the job, but the right decided to challenge for both positions, with Carroll nominating for Leader and Police Minister Anthony Carbines running for Deputy. A senior Labor figure described the move to the Australian this afternoon as World War III. He said, quote, "It's incredibly embarrassing for Jacinta and Dan, a total mess." Another factional source said, quote, "We wanted an end to the Andrews era and the start of more power sharing. That's not happened. Putting Pallas up was a disaster. He blew the money and is so much yesterday's man." The move ultimately paid off for the right, with a compromise deal being brokered for Carroll to withdraw from the leadership race and instead become Deputy Premier, locking Tim Pallas out of the job and preventing continued socialist left control of the party. It would appear to be the beginning of the end of the massive factional power that Andrews amassed and wielded to his own advantage as Premier. And as you can see, we're taking some more live pictures there of Jacinta Allan after being sworn in. Several members not aligned with the socialist left were essentially pushed out because last year's state election, either through pre-selection challenges or the threat of them. Frank Maguire in Broadmeadows, Luke Donnellan in Narre Warren North, Robin Scott in Preston and Marlene Carius in Koroit all got the axe. There were more in the upper house too. And in the case of Maguire, who is the brother of Eddie Maguire, he was shafted in a factional carve-up of seats. The National Executive of the ALP took control of the Victorian Party after allegations of branch stacking involving Adam Somyurek, and factional warlords took the opportunity to wrongly link him to the branch stacking. He spoke of this immense factional power in his valedictory speech last year.
"This was wrong, misled the public and damaged my reputation. The subsequent IBAC report has proved the faction under investigation was branch stacking in Broadmeadows against me. The National Executive refused to meet me before casting their votes. The factional deals were done. I was disendorsed because I was outside the new controlling factional power alliance. Performance, results and big picture ideas did not count because Broadmeadows is a safe seat, too valuable in the eyes of factional power brokers not to control in a numbers game with a winner-takes-all sense of entitlement."
That is how Andrews operated, and people within the government knew it. Somyurek, who ran the moderates faction, had been a major power broker in the party, and after he was forced out due to the branch stacking allegations, the socialist left and elements of the right formed a power-sharing deal. Those MPs outside of that arrangement, particularly those who'd been aligned to Somyurek, were essentially frozen out. Andrews was lobbied by colleagues to protect sitting MPs, but the record very clearly shows that he refused to do so. He also refused to meet with many of the MPs who were in the firing line. Just months before the election last year, Andrews lost 4 of his most senior ministers in one shot. Deputy Premier and Education Minister James Merlino, Health Minister Martin Foley, Police Minister Lisa Neville and Sports Minister Martin Pakula. They all retreated to the backbench for the remainder of their terms before retiring in November. And on face value, you might have said at the time that this presented a problem for Andrews because he lost about 7 decades worth of political experience and would have to go to the state election with a relatively new and inexperienced cabinet. But Andrews, being the masterful politician that he is, used it as an opportunity to cement his factional power. Against Labor conventions, he took the opportunity to install Jacinta Allan, now the Premier, from his socialist left faction, as deputy. Now, she wasn't particularly wanted as deputy by her own faction, but Andrews exploited division within the right to have her installed as his ally and ultimately his successor. He also went against party processes and rejected a push by members of the socialist left, his faction, for a democratic ballot to choose the other new ministers, instead insisting he would do it himself. That allowed him to do deals with the factions within the right to elevate their members to the ministry if they supported Allan as deputy. It was the kind of ruthless politics Andrews became known for, but the fact of the matter is that it worked. Then come December, just after the state election, 7 Labor MPs shifted from the right to the socialist left, including Treasurer Tim Pallas, the man who was today tipped to become Deputy Premier, and Major Events Minister Steve Dimopoulos. That reduced the number of cabinet ministers the right was entitled to, and Sean Lean was demoted. As compensation, they made him President of the Legislative Council. And with Pallas moving, it meant the Premier, the Deputy Premier and the Treasurer were all in the socialist left, further cementing Andrew's stranglehold on the party. It was reported at the time that they did this because they thought they could, quote, contribute more to the government and secure future promotions in a different group. In other words, they wanted to get ahead and not be frozen out. They had to get into bed with the Premier to achieve that. But with the right back in the fold, things could soon change. It will now try to regain its power in the party and no doubt court those who abandoned them for the socialist left to come back. It hopefully signals a return to cabinet government instead of the sort of iron fist rule that was typical of Daniel Andrews. Andrews was disliked by people within his own party as much as he was outside it. And those he put in his freezer, quote unquote, as it was often characterised by those he shafted, haven't forgotten. One of the great successes of the Andrews government was the amount of control he had. He ran it as he wanted it, and there was seldom a word of dissent. That can, of course, lead to bad decisions, but it guarantees a united front, even if achieved by fear. Jacinta Allan will not have that luxury. She will have to face a far more fractured Labor Party and a right faction that is keen to make up for lost time.
You know, Daniel Andrews has resigned. His ability to control the party, particularly the Labor caucus, was second to none. But I think we are now entering into a new paradigm, and you could see today's a good example of that, where people are prepared to probably say things and do things which they wouldn't have done when Daniel was in charge. You would see, I think, parts of the right, in particular, the party that will want to have a greater say on what happens in government going forward, and I think it's probably healthier for the incumbent government to actually have that sort of more balanced approach to governing the state.